The biggest problem is that people have, they think they're not supposed to have them.
Ah, right, yeah.
Problems are a sign of life. I remember I interviewed, what was his name? Norman Vincent Peale, Dr. Peale, who wrote the original Power of Positive Thinking book. When I was 32, he was 92, and he invited me, because my career was growing, he invited me up to Toronto to meet him at an event he was doing. So I came backstage, and we spent about an hour in advance, and I remember asking him, I said, I'm curious. I said, why are you still doing these events? And he goes, well, Tony, there's still a few negative people around here. At 92. I said, what's the most, and think about 92, he's men's horse and carriage to rockets, right? Nothing to computers, right? Just the changes in his lifetime were just unbelievable. And I said, what do you think is the most important thing people need to understand? And he said, the power of problems. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, the only people without problems are in cemeteries. And I said, I think I heard that somewhere. He said, in 1947, I said that. He said, but they never finished my quote. I said, the only people without problems are in cemeteries. So if you don't have any, you better go on your knees and pray for some. Because he said, problems are a sign of life. And what I found is problems call us. He said he was sitting one time at this dais. He was at a speaking dais. It was like a luncheon. And beside him was the heavyweight champion of the world. It was back in the 40s, right? And he said that he looked at him. His name was Gene Tunney. He's a pretty famous guy. And he said, Gene, how do you get muscles like that? And Gene said, do you really want to know, or are you just asking? And he said, and he told me in his head, he goes, I was thinking, I was just asking, but now I really want to know, because he was so intense about it. He says, no, I really want to know. He goes, every day I push against unbelievable resistance, and that's what sculpts these muscles, right? That's how you build muscle. And he said, I thought about it a long time afterwards, and he said, I think that's how we develop spiritually. We push against problems, and that's what sculpts our souls. And so I think to think you shouldn't have problems, you can call them challenges, it feels better, but it's part of life, it's part of the journey. And solving them makes you bigger, more alive, more spiritually developed, more human, more caring. Pain and suffering, you don't have to suffer long, but we're all going to experience some of it, right? But decision-making is how we get out of it.
Yeah, and you're so right, because one of the biggest challenges today is overthinking.
Yes.
Right? We're exposed to more information, or so we think, and I was reading a study that was saying we now consume 72 gigabytes of data per day.
I don't know how much we have truly consumed. Absorb is a different one.
Absorb, but it's like faced by it.
Yeah.
And you think, like, that's a lot. I remember when you were lucky enough to get 1 gigabyte on your iPhone, and now we're talking about 72 gigabytes coming at you.
Yeah.
So decision-making is the kind of arrow that cuts through that.
100%.
Because that's the only way to get out of overthinking.
Yeah.
And so if someone's spiraling, if they actually listen to you and said, hey, if I just make one decision off of this, that will actually create a shift for them.
I can tell you too, it's too long in a conversation like this to describe in detail, but I can give you how I make important decisions.
Please.
I have a 6-step process, and if people want to jot it down, I call it OOCEMR. Those are the trigger letters for what I do, OOCEMR. And I developed this years ago because I only had one business. Now I'm fortunate enough, I have 114 companies. We do over $10 billion in business. I have no business background, all decision-making, learning skills, et cetera. But way back then when I had a small business, these decisions were just, it was tough. They were important decisions. They felt like they were life and death decisions for the business. And I knew that knowing how smart I am, you're better with a group of people around you. Because even if you have more information, they have another perspective, And so I was trying to find a decision-making model, and I thought, well, all decision-making is really value clarification. Like, what's most important to you? Like, what you decide, what someone else decide may be different, but may be right. Because it's about what do you value most, right? So I thought, I should start with decision-making, not by all the emotion that I may have of either anxiety or fear or excitement or passion. Either one can lead you astray. It's like, what do I want? What's the outcome? That's the first O.
Outcome.
So I get people, and by the way, I tell people, do not do this in your head. The reason people get overwhelmed is they ask multiple questions too fast to answer. It's like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. What if she says this? What if he did that? But what if it doesn't do that? And you're asking 20 questions, and you don't have the processing power to answer them, so you're just going to overwhelm. Slow it down,
Write this
one
down.
thing at a time, right? But start not with what you're afraid of, start with what you want. Because that's how the human nervous system is designed. It's designed to make things happen, to create. So if you become a creator, you start with the one. So what are your outcomes? And this is the reason it's hard to make decisions for most people is they have multiple outcomes they're trying to get from the same decision, right? They want to make everybody happy, and they want to make $1 million, and they want to have more free time, and, all simultaneously. So you have to say, which of those things is most important to you? Is it the free time? Is it the family time? Is it to make more money? You have to decide what's most important for you, right? So I have people write down their outcomes, and they're usually if they're having a hard time, it's because there's multiple outcomes. And then I also say, don't ever do this in your head, because you can't manage it all in your head. Picture's worth 1,000 words. So you write down the outcomes, and then you put them in order. And then you put the why, because the why is what matters. Like, what is the reason? What's the emotion behind this? What is it even though I say this is what I want, what do I want out of this? What's it going to give me? It's going to give me joy. It's going to be happiness, fulfillment, spiritual development. What is it, right? So now when you're crystal clear what you want and the order you want it in, and that's critical. What's number one? You got to be rigorous. Now you can make decisions by going to second, what are your options? And I always tell people one option is no option. 2 options is dilemma. You need at least 3 choices to be a choice, right? And when you get to 3, you usually find there's 4 or 5. Now, you may not like them all, but you shouldn't lie to yourself and say, this is the only option. That'll stress you out. Or these 2 are the only option, you'll get stuck in a dilemma. So I write out all the options. Then I go to OOC is consequences, which is what you're doing the decisions for. What's the upside and the downside of each of these decisions to the best of my knowledge? The upside could be this and this, the downside could be that and that. I've considered the first half, okay? Now you know what exactly you want, you know what your options are, and you know upsides and downsides of each. So now we're gonna go into the last 3 stages. I'm gonna evaluate, mitigate, and resolve. Evaluate. Now I'm gonna evaluate what's the probability of those consequences. Because you might have something that's like, oh my God, if this happens, it's the worst thing on earth, but the probability is next to 0, and you're all stressed out. Unless you evaluate probability, you're wasting your time. You might have some go, oh my God, if this works out, it's gonna be the greatest thing in the history of the world, but the likelihood of happening is 0, right? You can't let those extremes get you. So you gotta start to see by evaluating what's there. And then the last 2 steps are fast. It's mitigation. Mitigation means, okay, I've seen what I want, I know my options, I know the upside down, I know what's probable. Now, could I take something from this option and mix it with this one? Is there a way to mitigate the downsides? And almost always there are. And at this stage, your brain gets really creative because it's not in fear or uncertainty or anxiety, because you're not in your head, it's right in front of you. And the last part is resolve. And I gave you a million stories, it was too late to do, but I can just tell you, I've made personally $400 million from one decision I made from this personally. I'm trying to give you an economic piece. What the spiritual, emotional value has been on things is priceless. And I can honestly tell you by using this system, I'm writing this book right now called The Power of Decision, because I want people to have that skill. And I show them everybody, Bezos' decision-making skills. I teach people everybody's format, but this is my format for doing it. And I found it to be incredibly valuable, especially when you add commit, resolve, to it, not just decide to the process. So I hope that's helpful for people.
That's a great system. That's the best way I've heard it explained. I really appreciate that model, because I think too much of what decisions making is based on today is, well, if you really want something and you go after it and you organize and you have a plan, you'll get there. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you didn't evaluate the probability, you didn't look at it from a systematic point of view. Or the other side of it is like, all right, you made a decision, you get some good insight, get some good advice, get some good mentorship, you pivot. But the point is, you can save yourself so much time.
You got it.
By doing what you just shared.
Huge amounts of time.
Huge amounts of time, money, and energy. I was going to ask you, Tony, you have such a systematic brain. Like when I've learned from you, listened to you, everything is so process-oriented, which I love. But at the same time, you have this deep faith, this deep spirituality, and you brought it out there. You said, I made $400 million, and at the same time, the emotional and spiritual benefits are off the charts. Talk to me genuinely, because I think today we all hear about, oh, you can manifest this, and you can get that and this. I feel like you have a really pragmatic and process-driven approach to both. Yes. How does faith, how does energy, how does spirituality correlate with a very systematic, process-driven approach?
That's a great question. No one's really asked me that question. That's nice. It's a reflection of your qualities as well, which is, I think you look at both sides as well as I do. I think there's nothing more important than spirit, soul. There's nothing more important than your spiritual development. Anything else is a joke. And yet, maybe the best way to describe it is think about it as East and West, right? We both have experiences of both. I go to India at least once a year on average, and I've been going since I was in my 20s because I was fascinated by the cultural differences And as a gross generalization, the East is more about internal development. If you go to a place like Varanasi, which is one of the oldest cities on the planet, 3,800 years old, they have fires that have been burning for 38 straight years nonstop. And for people who don't know it, in that culture, everyone has different perceptions of God or belief of what God is. But in that particular culture, it doesn't matter what kind of Hindu you are. There's some believe you should give up all your clothing, everything but your clothes. Some people believe it's studying the Vedas. Some people believe it's through yoga. Different ways to get to God, a million different ways. And there's more than 300 million different gods, your own personal God in that culture, right? Very different. But they have a belief there that if you die in Varanasi, that's the only thing you have unified, then you don't come back because the belief is reincarnation. So they want to, not come back, which would be nirvana, right? And they burn these fires, and when someone dies, they try to get to Varanasi no matter what they do because they believe if they die there, they won't come back. And the city is filled. You've been there, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Filled with people that are dying and joyous.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember we went to Mother Teresa's facility, and there was a woman there that was, tiny little lady, and she was like in her 90s. And I was talking with her, she broken English, and she was mad as hell. She was dying, and she was mad. They scooped her off the streets, and they're helping her. She came here to die because this was her, really pissed off, right? And then most Americans have, they burn the bodies. I watched them burn the bodies. I'm on this boat, and I'll never forget the first time I did this. And I watched this little boy who was flipping this, looked like stick or twig, and it was his grandfather's leg. No one is crying. No one is sad. They believe that the body is the t-shirt. You burn it, and it goes away. So the spiritual side of life is all that is seen there, but yet people live in squalor. You come to America and people get stressed about they didn't get the special burger sauce on their burger, right? And you see people that live with tremendous economic opportunity who spoil it and don't take advantage of it. And people have tremendous economic opportunity when they're not fulfilled in their relationships. They're not, who's to say they're not spiritually developed, but looks on the outside by the way they treat people, they're not spiritually developed. And so I don't believe you have to pick one or the other. I believe that they go together. I've always believed when I originally was learning, constantly listening to albums, that's how old I am, and cassette tapes and reel-to-reels, that's how old I am, 8 tracks of various professors, speakers. I was just immersing myself in things. I noticed that almost everybody specialized in either how I can look at as philosophy or strategy, right? Philosophy is critical. It determines the quality of your life. It determines whether you're happy or not happy, fulfilled or not fulfilled. Strategy is how. How do you get it done? And strategy is critical because you could save a decade with the right strategy in business, in your personal life, with your body. The wrong strategy and you're going to be ill, right? And so early on I decided you need both. So I teach both. And I don't think that's anything but intelligent, to do both. So that's how I look at it. But if you think, like, what creates, when you look, I try to look at what does everybody want? And we're all different. And I think the best example I can give is that people want an extraordinary quality of life. But that definition is different for everybody. Mm-hmm. Like some people's idea of an extraordinary life is, 3 beautiful children and a husband or wife that they adore. Some people's is to write poetry or write music or to build a farm or a garden. Some people's is to grow a business. Everyone has completely different ideas of what that is. So I don't pretend that my life should be your life, or I'm the example for you, but I'm an example of how you can take what you believe you want to create and make it real by a combination and enjoy it. Because how many of you know have achieved everything you want and then said, is this all there is? Because they didn't have the right philosophy, or they were trying to achieve something they thought would meet a need for significance and they missed love, the more important pieces of life.